Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid, but today is the 29th of June 2021, and these are the stories that we will be talking about during the course of the show. We will begin, ladies and gentlemen, by a couple of drone attacks that have happened near the Indian Air Force base in Jammu. And of course, as usual, and something that was expected, is that India always puts the blame on Pakistan when it comes to anything that happens in India, whether it's true or not. This is what India is claiming, whether it be India Today or other media outlets, that there have been some IED attacks through the use of drones, and there have also been a third instance in 3 days that drones have been spotted in the Jammu area near the Indian Air Force. Now, of course, India has always been the first to pinpoint at Pakistan without any proof whatsoever whenever something happens in the country, and we'll be discussing that in our leading segment. In our second segment of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about Indian atrocities in Kashmir, and of course the UN Chief Antonio Guterres has urged India to end the use of pellets against children in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region. He has taken out a report on that. And of course, the use of pellet guns, whether it be on innocent children, bystanders, women or men in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, is nothing new. Also, our Minister Khuwaja Chaudhary has said that India is behind anti-Pakistan propaganda on social media. He said this in the National Assembly as well. We'll be talking about this in our second segment. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about the Ehsaas safety net program that the government has launched against the low-income society. And this time, what is heartening to note is that transgenders have been included in this Ehsaas safety net program, and also stipends to secondary and higher secondary levels will also be given as part of this Ehsaas safety net program. This is the latest amendment or addition to the Ehsaas Safety Net program. Then we'll be talking about the National Command and Operations Center. On Monday, in a meeting, has made certain changes as far as the daily lives of people in Pakistan are concerned, whether it be the restaurants to operate at 50% indoor capacity, but the exception being made only for vaccinated persons, with of course these persons showing their certificates of vaccination, whether it be the cinemas that are being opened or other measures that have been taken. And finally, Pride of Performance winner and legendary Saraiki and Punjabi folk singer Allah Ditta Lunewala has passed away of a heart attack in his native town in Chiniot late on Monday. He was of course a Pride of Performance artist and was known for many folk tunes across Pakistan and across the globe. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that is of course India and its belligerent attitude towards Pakistan. Whenever something happens in Pakistan without any proof whatsoever, the first thing they do is pinpoint their fingers at our country. More in the following report.
In a desperate attempt to face saving, Indian authorities are seemingly hiding behind self-serving terrorism smokescreen as use of drone or explosive materials is impossible in occupied territory, sternly strangulated by Indian military. 2 low-intensity explosions and the suspected use of drones near Air Force Station in Jammu area of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir surfaced prior to blatantly engineered elections in revamped constituencies to confront Pakistan with a fait accompli. Pakistan has already presented irrefutable evidence of Indian links to terrorism on Pakistani soil, such as the unfolding of Kulbhushan Yadav's saga after spy's arrest in March 2016. Thus, the escalating Indian sinister designs are jeopardizing regional peace and security of South Asia. Minister for Information and Broadcasting Khuwaja Chaudhary exposed Indian hand behind social media disinformation campaign during recent protests by the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan on the blasphemy issue. India's misleading propaganda against Pakistan was aimed at fomenting unrest in the country to dent its vigorous support for Kashmiri freedom movement. Earlier, a European group has uncovered an Indian disinformation network operating since 2005 to discredit nations in conflict with Delhi, particularly Pakistan. The Brussels-based EU Disinfo Lab palpably exposed Indian aims. The actors and their actions were referred to as the Indian Chronicles. It showed maximization of negative content on Indian adversaries, primarily Pakistan. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been bearing the brutalities of Indian security forces since decades. Apparently, India has failed and will continue to fail in hiding its atrocious repression of the Kashmiri people.
Now, to talk about this continued spate of Indian belligerent, of course, pinpointing the fingers at Pakistan and the false flag operations and so on and so forth, and of course the social media campaigns against Pakistan, we've been joined by Brigadier retired Amjad Ali. He's a defense analyst. Brigadier Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Brigadier Saab, in this latest, of course, incident that concerns the drone attacks, and the Indian media is highlighting it every day. They are talking about, in the third instance in 3 days, drones have been spotted near Sunjivan military station, Kaluchak and Kunjwani areas of Jammu, and of course 2 IED attacks that happened on Sunday. And the first thing they do is pinpoint the fingers at Pakistan without any proof whatsoever. This is not the first time. Do you feel that the world has realized that India is on a smear campaign rather, against Pakistan?
Umar, I think now the international community must also know that whenever there is something happening in India, and whenever there is some, internal disputes in India, or there is something going on in India and there is unrest, they'll always point their finger towards Pakistan, because they think that it serves their multi-purpose. Number one is, of course, that to divert the attention of the international media, international community, and to tell them that it's not we that are doing anything in Pakistan, rather they are doing anything. And whatever they are doing in Pakistan, that should be known to the international community. Whatever the Pakistanis are doing here, that should be known to international community. Secondly, they try to divert the attention of their own masses. And that is also one of the case, because soon there is something going wrong in India, or there has gone something wrong in the India. Their internal people, they start to raise the voices against the sitting government, and they try to point their finger, and therefore they divert their attention to Pakistan. But the most important thing here is that a few days back, you must have seen something happened in Pakistan, in Lahore and Georgetown, and we, the Pakistanis, we caught them, and the entire gang is, unveiled, and the complete evidences, those are at the hands now with Pakistan, are in the hands of Pakistan. Those have been identified that India was unequivocally, involved in these attacks. So therefore, they try to stage
but
such
Brigadier
type
Saab, this is
of
not the first
dramas.
time. We know Kulbhushan Yadav's case. We know all the other cases in the past as well. We also know of the false flag operations that happen. And then, of course, the first thing they do is pinpoint the fingers. We know about what happened in Pulwama, and so on and so forth. The list is endless. Don't you feel it is high time? I mean, I say it again and again in my show. Don't you feel it is high time that the world body kind of, says to India that enough is enough? You've been going on with lies for so long. You need to, look at things as they are, and, look into your own shirts and in your own pockets to understand what's going wrong with your own country, not putting the blame at other countries and other societies.
No, they must do it. There is no doubt in it. They must do it. The international community must realize. The world must realize. The United Nations must realize. The United States of America, the world powers, they must realize that whenever there is something wrong in India, they'll try to point their finger out towards Pakistan. And we also hope and wish that they should. But whatever is happening in Kashmir, till to date, we have been, successful in awakening the world community that at least their eyes are now open, that there is some human rights violation are going on in Kashmir. Sooner or later, we hope, and sooner or later, our diplomatic efforts will also prove and will bring some fruitful results, where the international community and the world as whole, they will certainly
Brigadier
look
Saab,
towards India.
Narendra Modi, do you feel he is hoodwinking? No, Narendra Modi, do you feel he is hoodwinking the entire international community? A, he tries to have a dialogue with the so-called Kashmiri leaders, the 14 Kashmiri leaders. That happens in New Delhi. Nothing concrete happens out of it. At the same time, you see what is happening in Jammu. We don't even know who is behind what is happening in Jammu. These IED attacks, supposedly nothing has happened, and despite that, the first thing they do after this is that they say it's Pakistan is behind it. The drone attacks are being perpetrated by Pakistan. You remember the pigeon also in the past, and they said it was a Pakistani spy, and they had captured a pigeon at one time, and it said that this was coming from Pakistan, and so on and so forth. This is also not only in your point of view. What would you like to say to it? Is it not only a means of hoodwinking the world, B, diverting attention from things such as the farmers' protests, such as the economic turmoil in India, and so on and so forth?
Yes, it is. Mr. Modi is hoodwinking himself. He is hoodwinking the entire nation because he's trying to cover the unprofessional attitude of even their air force. You must have seen that in a couple of days in past, there is something drastically wrong between the chief of defense staff and their air chief. That was because of the unprofessional attitude of their air force, unprofessional attitude of their forces. And this is how Modi and the BJP government, they try to do such things where they try not only to hoodwink themselves, not only to hoodwink the international community, they try to hoodwink their own masses, they try to hoodwink their own media, they try to hoodwink all those in their government which precisely know that these are the follies and these are the failures of this government, which they try to do at that time when there is something going on in the region or at the international level.
Brigadier Saab, what is also very surprising to me as a person more than an anchor is that the fact that Pakistan is still on the grey list despite having complied with 99% of the conditionalities that had been put forward, whereas India, that is not only involved in terrorism of more than one kind and is doing things like what we've seen proof of Kulbhushan Yadav, EU Disinfo Lab, social media sites since 2005, malicious campaigns against Pakistan, against other countries, it's never put on the list. Is there a deliberate kind of a tilt towards India as far as the foreign world is concerned?
There is. They have the sympathies with India. It is not only because that is a state so-called as the largest democratic state. It is also their demographic systems. It is also their, multi-ethnic formulation of that very country. It is also because of the volume of that country and the volume of the population of that country, because the world is sympathetic towards them. They also think that most of the time, our Prime Minister also pointed it out, they also face Islamophobia from Pakistan. And that is to be taken out from the minds of mind of the international community, which will sooner or later. But that is unfortunate. That FATF, out of their 27 demands, 26 were met by Pakistan after a lot of hard work, But they did not put it out. Rather, they put up 7 more demands. And that is the reason, that is the clear-cut indication. That is a biased attitude in favor of India, and that is the biased attitude against Pakistan. That every time they put up a new demand, but inshallah, I am sure the government is on it and will meet that. And one day this world will realize that all the acts of terrorism in the region as a whole, Pakistan was not behind that. It was mainly those belligerent designs of India to become the superpower in this region, superpower of Southeast Asia. And
All right,
sooner or later,
Brigadier
inshallah.
Saab, we all remember all the revelations that Kulbhushan Yadav had given to the media and to the entire world as to the networks that have been planted in Pakistan to sprout malicious campaigns against Pakistan, to sprout further instability in Pakistan. Do you feel that India can get away literally with murder?
Not at all. It is not only Kulbhushan Yadav. There was a dossier given to them by DGISPR
Yes,
and
of course.
by the
That was after
Pakistan.
Kulbhushan.
And yes, with the clear-cut evidences, all types of evidences were given to the international community, were given to United Nations that look, India is behind everything which they are trying to do in order to meet their Mahabharata concept.
All right. Now, Brigadier Saab, what needs to be done now? You know, in this latest, let's take into fact this latest incident of the drone attacks. All right, and the pinpointing against Pakistan again by India. And this is happening in Jammu. We all remember Pulwama. It's not that far off. Do you feel that India is using this incident as a scapegoat to maybe have some kind of a false flag operation, or maybe kind of instigate something against Pakistan as it has done in the past?
Yes, you can expect that. But I fear that maybe they were trying to do something, and they are very good at shooting down their own aircraft. They are very good in mishandling and mismanaging their airspace. You never know. That was a drone which was sent across the
Exactly.
border, which was LOC, which was just 14 kilometers away, and that rather came onto them. That can be one of the possibility. There can be another possibility also, that they try to stage it in order to carry out a false flag operation in
It won't be
Pakistan.
the
But it is
first time
not
that
that.
something has been staged, Brigadier Saab. Isn't that true?
It is. It might be. Yeah, this is one of the possibility, one of the options.
Hmm.
One of the things which cannot be, we cannot just
Discarded.
give,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
discard it. We can't discard it.
All right, let's finally talk about the social media campaigns against Pakistan, whether it be the EU Disinfo Lab report, whether it be all the other malicious campaigns, whether it be the fake websites that have sprouted since 2005, and so on and so forth. Our, of course, Minister for Information, Fawaz Chaudhry, again reiterated that in the National Assembly very recently. Do you feel some kind of stop will happen from the Indian side, or do you feel there will be a continuity of what India has been doing for so long, as far as social
There
media
will.
campaigns against Pakistan are concerned?
They'll keep doing it because they'll try to, they will try to embroil Pakistan with the help of the social media, which they are very efficient at. But I'm sure Pakistan is doing a lot in order to blunt these designs, and there is a very active system which is coming up, and which had already come up, and every activity, undesirable activity by their side, it has been identified, being blocked, and the counter narrative is also there, and they are trying to Pakistan is, trying to counter all the designs and trying to forge all their activities which are taking place on social media.
Let's hope, Brigadier Saab, that the world also understands and hears Pakistan's plea in the proper manner and reacts through considerate action against India. Thank you very much, Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab, to have joined us and to have talked to us about this very, very important topic, that is the malicious campaign against Pakistan by India that has been going on since a very long time. The latest incident being these drone attacks and, of course, the pinpointing of fingers at Pakistan. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. In our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the Indian atrocities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. There's nothing new on that. Since 2019, since the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, there has been an increase of human rights abuses against people, especially against children, and the use of pellet guns. More in the following report.
Amid growing anger and misery in Kashmir, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres pressed India to halt the use of pellets against children in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The remarks of UN Secretary General surface against the backdrop of the latest report titled Children and Armed Conflict presented in the UN Security Council. As the botched Indian occupation turns messier and everyday life suffers, the disputed territory remains on crippling lockdown. The intermittent outburst of public wrath is crushed by brute force, whereby children are also convenient targets of Indian fire and fury. Extremely disturbing images of the innocent children being mercilessly shot with pellet guns have seemingly shook world conscience. The world's mention of grave violation of children's rights in occupied territory expose the real brutal force and face of India that proudly taunts its so-called democratic credentials. Nearly 2 years after scraping the special constitutional status of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Modi called a surprise meeting of Kashmiri leaders, mostly loyalists, at his New Delhi residence to legalize BJP's tyranny in occupied territory. Though it's still not clear that what prompted India to suddenly call this meeting, one thing is clear, that the attempt to illegally absorb the region has been failed, accompanied by growing international concerns. If India seeks a genuine way forward, New Delhi must engage with Pakistan as well as the Hurriyat leadership, as the Kashmir issue cannot be resolved without the involvement of all stakeholders.
Now, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has again urged India to end the use of pellet guns against children in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and stop associating children with the security forces in any manner. This was, of course, in his latest report on children and armed conflict that was presented in the United Nations Security Council on Monday for an open debate. He said, and I quote, "The disregard for children's rights amid war and upheaval is shocking and heartbreaking." We've been joined by Dr. Asma Shakir Khuwaja. She's a foreign affairs expert, to talk more about this. Of course, the human rights abuses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the report that has been taken out by Antonio Guterres. Thank you very much, Dr. Saiba, to have joined us. Dr. Saiba, nothing new again as far as the human rights abuses by India and in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. But what is I wouldn't say nice, but what is kind of heartening is that the United Nations and other organizations are finally taking note of what is actually happening, whether it be the brutalities against women or whether it be the use of pellet guns. How do you see this report that has been published by Antonio Guterres? And of course, it is up for open debate in the United Nations Security Council. But do you feel that this will have any impact on the world bodies as far as the Indian brutalities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are concerned?
Thank you, Umar, for asking such a pertinent question. But first of all, what we need to understand, that this report is about children in armed conflict. And through his statements, or through this report, UN has considered Kashmir as an armed conflict between Pakistan and India and Kashmiris, of course. So first of all, this understanding and raising the issues, the way Indian occupying forces in Kashmir are treating children, innocent children in the conflict, it is really important that the atrocities against them have been audible and have visibility in the international report. So definitely it is a good when it comes to diplomacy or Pakistan's diplomatic efforts to bring the atrocities, the way the human rights violation, and the way above all Indian forces are treating Kashmiri children. So this has been highlighted, and this is really important that world is, because as we all know, that UN is most prestigious international forum when it comes to peaceful conflict resolution and the issues of conflict. So it is really I would say I can see light at the end of the tunnel. I can see that the way UN Secretary, this report and UN Secretary General highlighted that the Kashmiri children have been deprived of their basic children's right. Their schools have been turned into detention camps or army military camps. That is really important. And the way Indian government is or Indian occupying forces are using indiscriminate firing, pellet guns, and all these against the children, and are detaining children. So this is this. But now like Pakistan needs to highlight this issue, and Pakistan needs to highlight these sections of this report when Kashmiri children and atrocities against them have been highlighted. We all know that children are one of the most vulnerable group when there is an armed conflict, and their childhood, their psychology, their mental peace, they all is being affected by violence around them. All has been
That
affected
is so
by
true,
the
Dr. Saiba. That is so true. Also, when Antonio Guterres says and asks India to take preventive measures to protect children, do you feel this will ever happen? Because as things go, or as things are going, I don't see any concrete action being taken by India. Do you?
Definitely, because when we see Indian occupying forces, their prime interest is to sustain their occupation or colonization of Kashmir. Their prime interest is not to protect the rights of Kashmiris, including Kashmiri children. So definitely they would focus on their larger interest, which is sustaining their colonization. But definitely such voices and reports have their impact. And now this issue is on the table, like the way Indian armed forces are treating Kashmiri children, and then now this is being documented, this is being registered. Now this report has become part of history. So now we have this documented evidence through this report that Indian armed, the way even Kashmiri children are sacrificing for for the demand of freedom and for their basic rights as children. Here I would like to mention again violence, the trauma violence inculcates among children, that the way this violence they carried out by Indian forces has been damaged Kashmiri
Has
children
traumatized an
permanently.
entire generation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, ma'am. But when Antonio Guterres
Generations,
urges
Umar,
India, ma'am,
generations.
also to
These
endorse the
children are
Safe
third
Schools
generation.
Declaration, Ma'am, when Antonio Guterres asks New Delhi to endorse the Safe Schools Declaration and the Vancouver Principles, which are, of course, commitments to protect students, teachers, schools, and universities from the worst effects of an armed conflict, again, my question to you is, will India pay heed? Will India act upon it?
If India acts upon it is a big question. Again, it depends upon how international community communicate this with India, how international community is serious to make India realize that whatever they are doing in Kashmir that cannot extend, or that is not sustainable for their occupation. And then above all, as I said, states address those issues if they come on their priority list. If we see the trends of Modi regime and the way RSS goons are ruling India, I don't think that they ever cared about human rights, whether it is the issue of Muslims or other minorities in
Hmm.
India, whether these are Sikh farmers or
Hmm.
they are innocent children in Kashmir, because protecting their well-being is not the priority or basic interest of Indian regime. Their basic interest
That is
is
true.
to highlight, is to strengthen the hegemony of Hindutva and the hegemony of expansionist designs of
And of
India.
course,
So
there is no limit
unfortunately,
when it
all
when it comes to hegemony, and of course, this Hindutva policy that the BJP government has been perpetrating or implementing since the last couple of years. But again, I'll come back to the report when Antonio Guterres says and talks about the detention and torture of children and the military use of schools. Again, this is a very important point, one that you pointed out before about the armed conflict, the fact that he has used the term armed conflict and Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is a reiteration of what Pakistan has been saying, that this is in fact an armed conflict, what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But secondly, the detention and torture of children is also something that Pakistan has been talking about time and again on different fora. Now that the UNO is also talking about it, do you feel that countries such as the US or maybe the EU will talk about it as well, or maybe discuss this with India in future talks?
see, saying this, that they will talk with India about this, is maybe too optimistic. But definitely, this report would be considered while formulating any policies towards India. They cannot, all the countries of developed world, they cannot ignore these reports. Otherwise, what's the purpose of publishing these reports and collecting data for such reports? So
Hmm.
definitely they cannot ignore it. But if they will talk to India about these issues, it again, it depends upon their priorities. If actually, instead of economic interests and capitalist interests, if actually the human rights are their primary interest, which they pretend, or at least they acknowledge that they are the biggest torchbearers of human rights, if they actually are, they should talk to India about this. And so you see, in Corona, in COVID-19, the education of all children across the globe have been affected. But unfortunately, Kashmiri children, they are suffering from this. Like if there are curfews or violent operations by Indian military or whatever, they are since like decades they are suffering from such closure of schools, insecurities in school, and this trauma of being violently attacked while studying in school. So this is really important. And then again, I would mention that these children are the almost third or fourth generation of children which is suffering this violence in the hands of Indian military. And all those contemporary, when we see freedom fighters in Kashmir, all of them had this tortured, humiliated childhood, which eventually influenced them to fight physically or to work physically for their independence and their freedom. So
Thank you very much,
definitely
Dr.
it's a
Thank you very
very
much, Dr.
important
Asma
issue.
Shakir Khaja Sahiba, to have joined us and, of course, to have talked to us about a very important issue, that is children, pellet guns, barbarities, brutalities against them, especially in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And, of course, Antonio Guterres has taken out a report on it. Let's hope, let's stay optimistic, Dr. Sahiba, and let's hope that the world really takes action against at least India perpetrating these human rights abuses against the children and the women. Thank you very much to have joined us, ma'am. Let's go to our last few stories, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly. Firstly, transgender persons as well as primary and secondary school children are going to be included in the Ehsaas Kafalat program. The program is going to provide a stipend of 2,000 rupees per month to the transgenders, along with saving bank account. The transgender people usually live as a separate community, of course, but now they will be declared as Kafalat beneficiaries. Also, the board has ratified the enhancement of Ehsaas education stipends to secondary and higher secondary school levels. The program will commence next month in all the districts of the country. 4,000 rupees will be given to the girls per quarter as compared to boys, who will get 3,500 rupees per quarter. And of course, this payment will be made biometrically to the mothers of the enrolled children, which is of course a very good measure in the right direction to include these two communities, especially the transgender community. Let's go to our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the meeting of the NCOC that was held very recently, in which some changes have been made as far as the measures that had been taken recently are concerned. Let me just very briefly talk about it. Indoor and outdoor dining has now been allowed until midnight. Indoor dining will be 50% occupancy for only those who have received both doses of the vaccines and can produce some kind of a vaccination certificate. Takeaways will be allowed 24/7. Markets and business activities to continue till 10 p.m. Essential services, petrol pumps, pharmacies, medical facilities will be operated 24/7. 400 people have been allowed to attend outdoor marriages. Indoor marriages have been permitted for only vaccinated individuals with a cap of 200 people. Shrines have been allowed to reopen at the discretion of federating units, with of course a strict implementation of the SOPs. The cinemas are allowed to reopen with strict COVID-19 protocols for the vaccinated individuals only until 1 a.m. And of course, everybody has to comply with providing their vaccination certificates at the entry of the cinemas. It's just some of the measures that have been relaxed as far as COVID-19 and the community are concerned. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, legendary Saraiki and Punjabi folk singer Allah Ditta Lunewala has passed away of a heart attack in his native town in Janio district On Monday, he was 64 years of age. He was born in 1957 in Lunewala. This is what he used as his name also when he started singing. He got music lessons from Mia Isa Khan. Then, of course, he started singing early in his life and became a huge singer as far as the Saraiki and Punjabi folk singing is concerned. Famous songs include Shama Pe Gaiyan, Tikita Do Le Le, and Main Cham Cham Nachti Phira, and he has sung Punjabi dastans too, including Sassi, and he has been conferred as of course the recipient of the Pride of Performance by the President of Pakistan as well. May his soul rest in peace, and may others follow in his footsteps like his children are. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories, news segments that matter to you and to us. Stay safe, get yourselves vaccinated, follow the SOPs. Allah Hafiz.
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸੱਜਣ ਲੁੱਟੇਂਦੇ ਰਹਿ ਗਏ ਮਰ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਬੀਮਾਇਆ ਰੋਜ਼ ਰੁਆਈ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਏ ਓਏ ਦੱਸ ਰਹਿਣੀ ਕੀ ਮਾਇਆ ਛਣ ਛਣ ਕਿਨ ਮੰਗਾ ਨੀ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਜਿੱਦ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਲੰਗਾ ਛਣ ਛਣ ਕਿਨ ਮੰਗਾ ਨੀ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਜਿੱਦ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਰੰਗਾਂ ਨੀ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਛਣ ਛਣ